The cosmos was a vast, unforgiving sea of stars and alien civilizations, and humanity was a speck in the infinite void. For centuries, Earth had remained a beacon of resilience and ambition, its people rising from humble beginnings to explore the stars. But as humanity expanded its reach beyond their homeworld, they encountered something unexpected, a cosmos teeming with powerful alien species, each with their own agendas, claiming vast territories in space. The first contact with the Orcs, a massive, reptilian race from the distant planet Xanther, was a wake-up call. They were technologically advanced, with fleets that could reduce Earth to ash within seconds. But Earth's leaders, both governmental and military, had been expecting this day. They had spent decades preparing for the possibility that humanity might one day face an existential threat, not from one, but from many. General Adam Brooks stood at the helm of Earth's united military forces. A decorated officer, he was the architect behind the Unified Earth Defense Coalition, EDC, a global alliance that combined the best minds in science and technology with a military force unlike anything the galaxy had seen. The first wave of Orcs ships had arrived without warning, their sleek, dark vessels cutting through the fabric of space like harbingers of doom. Their demands were simple: humanity was to surrender its most advanced technologies, and Earth would be absorbed into their empire. General Brooks' response was equally simple: we will not yield. He knew what was at stake. Earth was home to countless humans, his family, his friends, and the future of the species itself. But beyond that, humanity's potential for innovation and adaptation had always set them apart. They had survived a brutal history of war, disease, and disaster, and they had come to dominate Earth despite being a relatively young species in the grand timeline of the universe. Now, that same indomitable spirit would have to carry them through the most dangerous conflict humanity had ever faced. The first battle took place near the edges of Earth's solar system, just beyond the orbit of Mars. The Orcs fleet, massive and terrifying, had underestimated humanity's resolve. Under General Brooks' leadership, the EDC had constructed a series of defensive stations and advanced weaponry, relying on tactics that no one, not even the Orcs, could have predicted. At the heart of humanity's strategy was a game-changer, a new type of energy weapon, capable of harnessing the energy of the sun itself. Dubbed the Helios Cannon, it was still in its experimental stages, but General Brooks ordered its activation. The massive array of solar panels and weaponized energy converters focused on the Orcs flagship, the Jthar, as it approached the planet. It was humanity's first test against an alien species with overwhelming firepower, and the pressure was immense. Target locked, Lieutenant Maria Zhang, the head of the weapons division, reported from the command center. Her voice was steady, but the tension in the air was palpable. Fire, Brooks commanded, his tone unwavering. The Helios cannon unleashed a beam of concentrated solar energy that pierced through the vacuum of space, striking the Orcs ship with the force of 1,000 suns. For a brief moment, the light was blinding, casting a brilliant glow across the battlefield. The Jthar staggered as the beam tore into its hull, sending shockwaves through space. The Orcs flagship was not destroyed, but it was crippled. The alien fleet, now aware of humanity's technological advances, hesitated. They had never encountered a race that could strike back with such ferocity. The Orcs might have been a powerful empire, but humanity was not ready to bend the knee. General Brooks knew this was just the beginning. The Orcs were not going to back down. They would return, stronger and more determined. The battle had only served to ignite something deeper in the hearts of humanity, the desire to fight, to protect, and to survive. The Jthar limped back to its homeworld, but the message was clear: humanity was a force to be reckoned with, and Earth would not be subdued without a fight. As the battle subsided, Brooks stood before a massive holographic map of the galaxy. His fingers hovered above the control panel, tracing the trajectory of the Orcs fleet's retreat. They would regroup. They would return. But humanity's resolve had been tested, and they had passed. The first spark of a new era had been lit. The battle for survival and dominion in the universe had begun, and General Adam Brooks would lead humanity into the heart of the storm. And as he stared into the depths of space, a thought lingered in his mind: this was not just a fight for Earth. This was the dawn of a new chapter for humanity. The cosmos had no idea what was coming. The Orcs were not a race that would take defeat lightly. Their empire spanned across dozens of star systems, and their military might had subdued countless worlds. But Earth, humanity, had thrown a wrench into their plans. The first battle near Mars had revealed a spark of resistance, one that not even the Orcs had anticipated. It was clear that they could no longer simply crush humanity into submission. Back on Earth, General Adam Brooks worked tirelessly to prepare for the next confrontation. His strategic genius had earned him the respect of his peers, but he was keenly aware that the first battle had only delayed the inevitable. The Orcs would return with reinforcements, and they would bring weapons more destructive than anything humanity had ever faced. If Earth were to survive, it needed to be ready. The United Nations had summoned a global assembly, bringing together Earth's brightest minds, scientists, engineers, diplomats, and military leaders. The once fragmented nations of Earth had set aside their differences to unite under a common cause. The message was clear: humanity was no longer just a small planet in the universe. Earth was a battleground, and every soul was a soldier in the fight for survival. Brooks, we've been able to reverse engineer some of their technology, Dr. Eleanor Kwan, a brilliant astrophysicist, explained as she stood before a massive holographic display in the war room. Their ships, their weapons, they're beyond anything we could have imagined. But we've found weaknesses. The room fell silent as Dr. Kwan's words hung in the air. Earth had always prided itself on ingenuity and creativity, and now humanity's best and brightest were tasked with the impossible, turning the tables on a galactic empire with centuries of technological superiority. One of the Orcs' most powerful assets was their cloaking technology, ships that could appear and disappear without warning, making them nearly impossible to target in battle. The Helios cannon had been effective, but only because the Orcs had underestimated humanity's potential. Now, Brooks needed something more, a way to neutralize the Orcs' greatest advantage. "We can't fight them in the same way," General Brooks said, his voice firm. "We need to level the playing field." For weeks, Earth's engineers worked around the clock, developing new technologies, including a fleet of smaller, more agile ships designed to counter the Orcs' massive war vessels. These new craft, dubbed Shadows, were designed to be fast, nimble, and equipped with advanced cloaking technology of their own. The plan was simple: strike fast, strike hard, and disappear before the Orcs could retaliate. As humanity prepared its counteroffensive, the Orcs Empire had not been idle. Their fleet, battered but not broken, had returned to their homeworld of Xanther, where they regrouped, rebuilding their forces with new, advanced weapons and strategies. Their high command convened in the heart of their vast capital city, a massive structure built into the side of a craggy mountain, overlooking a sulfuric, red sky. Commander Vrax, the Orcs' most fearsome war leader, stood before his council, his scales shimmering with the colors of rage. "These humans, they dare challenge us," he growled, his voice echoing through the council chamber. "They think they can defeat the might of the Orcs? We will burn their cities, scorch their skies, and reduce them to ashes." His commanders, each one a towering figure of reptilian power, nodded in agreement. They had underestimated humanity once, but that mistake would not happen again. The Orcs were determined to crush Earth and any hope of rebellion in the galaxy. However, despite the Orcs' thirst for vengeance, a seed of doubt had begun to grow in their ranks. The humans' unexpected resilience and their ability to fight back against impossible odds had earned them a grudging respect. But respect would not save them. Back on Earth, the Shadows were ready. A fleet of these sleek, advanced vessels had been built in secret, equipped with the latest cloaking technology and weaponry. The human fleet, led by General Brooks, was poised to strike at the heart of the Orcs Empire itself. The war, which had begun as a single skirmish, had now escalated into something far greater. Humanity was no longer on the defensive, they were taking the fight to the Orcs. The first wave of Shadows would infiltrate deep into Orcs space, striking key military targets and gathering intelligence that would give Earth the upper hand. As the human fleet entered the vast reaches of Orcs territory, the enormity of what was at stake hit Brooks harder than ever. This was not just about Earth anymore, this was about the survival of humanity, about proving that even in the face of overwhelming odds, the human spirit could never be broken. With the shadows now in position, General Brooks gave the order. The battle for humanity's future had reached a tipping point. The Orcs would soon learn that humanity's fire was not easily extinguished. The gathering storm had begun, and no one, human or alien, could predict what the future would hold. The shadows emerged from the dark expanse of space, their sleek forms barely distinguishable from the void around them. A fleet of 30 ships, equipped with cutting-edge cloaking technology, had infiltrated the Orcs' outer defenses. It was a dangerous mission, one that could either turn the tide in humanity's favor or seal their doom. The Orcs had never encountered such an ambush before. They were used to dominating their enemies with sheer force and overwhelming firepower, not to being hunted in the dark corners of space. General Brooks stood in the command center of the flagship Vanguard, a massive ship that carried the pride of humanity's naval forces. He watched as the fleet's lead ship, Shadow 1, transmitted its first report. The Orcs were not yet aware of the human incursion, but the clock was ticking. Brooks knew that once the shadows struck, there would be no turning back. This was their moment to make a statement: humanity would not be conquered. Lieutenant Zhang, Brooks ordered, his voice calm yet filled with purpose. Commence the operation. We strike fast, we strike hard. No mercy. Lieutenant Maria Zhang, who had become humanity's most skilled pilot, was at the helm of Shadow 1. She had been with the EDC since its inception, and her nerves were steely as she engaged the cloaking systems. On the holoscreen in front of her, the Orcs outposts appeared as silent, darkened structures, scattered across the asteroid belt just outside of Xanthar's orbit. Each outpost was heavily guarded, but none of them were prepared for the onslaught that was about to be unleashed. With a nod from Zhang, Shadow 1 and the rest of the fleet engaged their cloaking devices. The ships melted into the dark void, leaving no trace of their presence. They maneuvered silently, bypassing the Orcs' outer defenses, slipping past massive fleets of automated drones that scanned the area for any sign of intrusion. As the shadows approached their first target, a massive Orcs military base positioned on the surface of a barren moon, Zhang's breath quickened. This was it, the first real test of humanity's counteroffensive. The Orcs had expected to crush them in the open field. Now, humanity would make them pay for their arrogance. Target locked, Zhang reported, her hands steady on the controls. Weapons primed. Proceed, Brooks responded, his voice unwavering, even as the tension in the command center increased. The success of this mission could set the tone for the rest of the war. Failure was not an option. With a flick of her wrist, Zhang unleashed the first volley of high-energy missiles. They tore through the silence of space, striking the Orcs base with pinpoint accuracy. Explosions rocked the surface of the moon as the first round of chaos erupted. The Orcs had no chance to respond, they were caught completely off guard. Direct hits on their power core, Zhang confirmed, as her ship pulled away, disappearing into the cloak of darkness once more. The rest of the fleet followed suit, launching wave after wave of missile strikes, each one targeting the Orcs' key infrastructure, weapon depots, communication hubs, and energy generators. The outposts were engulfed in flames, their structures collapsing under the might of humanity's weapons. The Orcs had barely begun to react and the shadows disappeared into the shadows once more. They had hit fast, hit hard, and then vanished without a trace. The Orcs' automated drones scrambled to scan the area, but by the time they had locked onto any readings, the human fleet was already gone, retreating to the safety of the outer void. Back on Earth, the news of the successful operation spread like wildfire. The EDC's communication channels buzzed with excitement as the mission was hailed as an unprecedented success. For the first time in human history, Earth had struck a blow against an empire far more advanced than their own. The Orcs, who had been so confident in their superiority, were reeling from the surprise attack. Humanity had not only survived the first wave of conflict but had taken the fight directly to the enemy. However, General Brooks knew that the battle was far from over. This was only the beginning. The Okari were not just going to lie down after losing a few bases. They were vengeful, and their response would come swiftly and with overwhelming force. As the shadows made their way back to the fleet's hidden base, Brooks called for a tactical briefing. His voice was resolute, his mind already turning to the next phase of the war. "We've sent them a message today," he said. "But they will retaliate. We must be ready for whatever comes next." A murmur of agreement filled the room. The members of Brooks' inner circle, hardened by months of preparation, knew what was at stake. The Okari would no doubt regroup, rebuild, and come after humanity with everything they had. The next encounter would be the true test of humanity's will to survive. And so, the stage was set for the next phase of the war. Humanity had made its first strike, but in the vast expanse of the cosmos, one victory could be just as fleeting as the dark void itself. The Okari would not forget the humiliation. But humanity had proven one undeniable truth to the universe: Earth was no longer just a speck in the void. It was a force to be reckoned with. The Okari had underestimated humanity once. They would not make that mistake again. Commander Vrax, enraged by the audacity of the humans, convened with his most trusted advisors in the heart of the Okari War Command. His massive, reptilian form loomed over the conference table, his eyes burning with fury. The Okari were proud, and their empire was built on the belief that they were invincible. To have a fledgling species like humanity strike them so decisively was an affront to their honor. "These humans are not like any race we have faced," Vrax growled. "They have shown cunning, resilience, and a strange unpredictability. Their attacks were calculated, precise. This war will not be as easy as I thought." His advisors nodded in agreement, but their faces were filled with disgust and frustration. The Okari had long dominated their corner of the galaxy with their advanced technology and brutal tactics, but humanity's ability to fight back was unlike anything they had seen. It was clear that the humans were not going to bow to their will. "We need to crush them, swiftly," Vrax said, slamming his fist down onto the table. "Send the entire Ninth Fleet. If they can strike with precision, then we will show them the full might of the Okari. We will make Earth a monument to our power, and no one will dare challenge us again." The Okari Ninth Fleet, one of their most formidable armadas, was deployed within days. It was a massive force, consisting of hundreds of warships and support vessels. The fleet was equipped with the latest in Okari weaponry, including planet-destroying lasers and high-powered ion cannons. Vrax's strategy was simple: obliterate Earth's defenses before they could strike again. The Okari had always relied on overwhelming firepower to crush their enemies, and that was exactly what they intended to do to humanity. Meanwhile, on Earth, General Brooks had been preparing for this very moment. The strike on the Okari outposts had been successful, but the retaliation they feared had already begun. Humanity's victory, while celebrated, had only been a prelude to the true test of their survival. "We knew this was coming," Brooks said to his command staff, his voice steady but filled with urgency. "The Okari are sending everything they've got. We can't rely on the shadows anymore, they've already seen our tactics. We need a new plan, and we need it fast." Dr. Eleanor Kwan, the lead scientist behind humanity's new technologies, stepped forward. "We've been working on a prototype that might give us an edge. It's still in the early stages, but it could make the difference." "What are you talking about?" Brooks asked, narrowing his eyes. "A weapon we've been calling the Gauntlet," she explained, tapping a series of keys on a nearby console. A holographic display flickered to life, showing a massive, ominous structure. "It's an energy-based cannon capable of harnessing the gravitational forces of a black hole. In theory, it could create a concentrated gravitational field powerful enough to pull enemy ships out of hyperspace, rendering them vulnerable to our attacks." The room fell silent. Brooks studied the display closely. "You're telling me we could use this to neutralize their fleet?" "If we can get it online in time," Kwan said, her voice tinged with caution. "But we'll need to get it into position before the Okari arrive. If they reach Earth first, the Gauntlet won't matter." Brooks nodded, his mind already racing. Time was running out. The Okari Ninth Fleet was closing in on Earth. Their ships emerged from the void, their dark forms a terrifying sight against the backdrop of stars. They were relentless, their sensors tuned to every movement, every pulse of energy in the surrounding space. The Okari had no intention of letting humanity slip through their grasp again. General Brooks made a quick decision. Prepare the fleet. Get the gauntlet into position, and deploy the shadows as a diversion. We'll need every advantage we can get. As humanity's forces readied themselves for battle, the Okari descended upon the solar system like an unstoppable tide. Their massive warships were armed with planet-shattering weapons, each one brimming with enough firepower to obliterate entire cities with a single shot. The first skirmish occurred just outside of Earth's orbit. The Okari launched waves of assault ships, intending to soften up humanity's defenses before the main fleet arrived. The shadows, cloaked and nimble, were already in position, striking the Okari vessels from the shadows. They hit hard, disabling several of the smaller assault ships and sowing confusion among the Okari ranks. But it wasn't enough. The Okari responded in kind, launching volleys of their own energy weapons that lit up the dark expanse of space. The battle became a chaotic blur of blinding lights, explosions, and evasive maneuvers as humanity's ships danced between the Okari's attacks. Meanwhile, in the heart of the conflict, the gauntlet was deployed. The colossal structure, still under construction, was positioned on the outskirts of Earth's orbit, poised to unleash its unimaginable power. It was a race against time. Would the gauntlet be ready before the Okari unleashed their full might? As the Okari ships bore down on Earth, the atmosphere inside Brooks' flagship Vanguard grew tense. The battle was escalating, and the moment of truth was fast approaching. "Lieutenant John," Brooks said, his voice filled with determination. "Keep the shadows moving. We need them to buy us more time." Zhang's voice crackled through the comms. "Understood, General. We won't let them get through." The Okari fleet was relentless. The first few hits had shaken them, but they quickly regrouped. Their advanced weaponry began to rip through humanity's ships, and Brooks knew they couldn't hold out forever. But then, the countdown for the gauntlet began. With a deafening hum, the massive energy cannon powered up, its core glowing brighter with each passing second. The gravitational field began to form, a swirling vortex of unimaginable force. "Fire the gauntlet!" Brooks shouted. In a burst of raw energy, the gauntlet unleashed its full power. A beam of concentrated gravitational force shot out toward the Okari fleet, pulling ships out of hyperspace and into the maelstrom of the field. The Okari ships were dragged helplessly toward the heart of the vortex, their energy shields buckling under the strain. It was the first real sign of weakness the Okari had shown, and humanity had finally delivered the blow they needed. But the Okari were not done yet. They would regroup, rebuild, and come for Earth again. The war had only just begun, but humanity had proven one thing: they were not ready to fall. The gauntlet had delivered a blow that no one could have predicted. The Okari fleet, ripped from hyperspace and rendered vulnerable, had been dealt a crippling strike. Several of their warships were lost to the immense gravitational force, their once imposing hulls twisted and shattered as they were pulled into the maelstrom. The remaining ships barely managed to escape, their crew scrambling to regain control as the gravitational field slowly dissipated. The damage was done, but the Okari had survived, their thirst for vengeance now more intense than ever. General Brooks watched the destruction unfold from the command center of Vanguard, his heart pounding. The gauntlet had worked, against all odds, it had worked. But as the dust settled, a deep unease settled in his gut. The Okari were no longer the invincible empire they had once appeared to be. Now, they were wounded, and dangerous. "They'll regroup," Brooks said, his voice grim. "And when they do, they'll come back with everything they have. This victory may have given us a chance, but the war isn't over." Dr. Eleanor Kwan nodded from across the room, her eyes reflecting the same concern. The gauntlet was a temporary solution, not a permanent one. "We've only delayed the inevitable. The Okari are adaptable. They will learn, they will evolve. We need to continue developing new technologies, new strategies. Brooks turned to his fleet commanders, who had gathered in the war room to assess their next steps. We've been given breathing room. We need to capitalize on it. We'll move quickly, strike their most vulnerable systems before they have the time to recover. We can't let them regroup. The plan was set into motion, but it was not without its challenges. The Orcs were fierce, their empire vast, and their technology far beyond humanity's. Even though they had been wounded, their strategic mind was sharp, and their desire for revenge was unmatched. Brooks knew that every move they made would be a calculated risk, but the alternative, sitting idly by while the Orcs rebuilt, was far worse. Meanwhile, in the heart of the Orcs War Command, Commander Vrax seethed with fury. The loss of so many ships had been a blow to his pride, but his mind was focused on one thing: retribution. He had seen the Gauntlet's power, and he knew it was not a weapon they could afford to underestimate. The humans had caught them off guard, but Vrax was determined to ensure it never happened again. "We will not be humiliated again," Vrax hissed to his council, his voice venomous. "These humans think they can challenge the Orcs? Let them believe their victory was anything more than a temporary setback. We will make them pay tenfold." Vrax's orders were swift and brutal. He commanded the construction of new ships, larger, stronger, and more resilient than before. The Orcs scientists worked around the clock, reverse engineering the Gauntlet's technology to develop a countermeasure. If the humans wanted to play with gravity, Vrax would show them just how easily that very power could be turned against them. "We'll strike back at Earth, harder and faster than they can comprehend," Vrax continued, his eyes glowing with malice. "And when we do, we will not stop until every human on their wretched planet has been wiped out." Back on Earth, the mood was a mixture of triumph and tension. The victory had been monumental, but humanity knew that it had come at a great cost. Earth had barely survived the first wave of retaliation, and the Orcs were already preparing their next move. General Brooks paced the war room, his mind focused on the difficult decisions ahead. The Orcs would not allow this humiliation to stand. He had no doubt that the enemy would come with an even greater force. The next battle would determine the fate of humanity. "We need to stay one step ahead of them," Brooks said, turning to his senior officers. "We've shown them we can hurt them, but we have to be ready for the full-scale war that's coming. Every ship we have, every ally, will need to be mobilized. No one gets left behind." In the coming days, humanity's military forces were put to the test like never before. The new technologies they had developed in secret, cloaking systems, energy shields, and advanced weaponry, were deployed in full force. The Shadows, humanity's most agile and stealthy ships, were spread across the galaxy in covert missions to sabotage the Orcs' reinforcements. But the Orcs were not standing still. The technological advancements they had made in the wake of their defeat were astonishing. Vrax had taken the Gauntlet's weakness, its reliance on a fixed position, and turned it into a strength. He had begun constructing a fleet of mobile, planet-destroying weaponry that could move with precision and decimate entire worlds. The Orcs' war machines were now capable of targeting Earth's moon, its defenses, and its most critical infrastructure with deadly accuracy. Despite the growing threat, humanity was not without hope. Their alliance with other alien species, once fragmented and weak, had begun to solidify. The EDC had reached out to peaceful species that had suffered under Orcs rule, offering them the opportunity to join the fight against the tyrants. One by one, these alien races had agreed to lend their support, sharing their own technologies and offering their military strength. On the edge of Orcs space, a secret coalition of human and alien ships gathered in the shadows, preparing for a final assault on the Orcs' heart of power. This new alliance was humanity's last hope, a final push to break the Orcs' stranglehold on the galaxy and ensure the survival of Earth. The time had come for humanity to take the fight to the Orcs' doorstep. "The Orcs may have the numbers, the power, and the cruelty of their empire," General Brooks said as he looked out over the fleet that had gathered at his command. "But they will never have what we have. Unity, resolve, and the unwavering belief that we will not let this galaxy fall into their hands." As the fleet made its final preparations for the most critical battle of the war, Earth's people stood united. The shattered calm was over. The final showdown was upon them. And humanity would no longer be content with simply surviving, they would fight for their future. The Orcs would learn that humanity's spirit was not something that could be extinguished. The galaxy had been forever changed by the war. The Orcs, once an unstoppable force, now found themselves locked in a struggle that had pushed them to the brink of annihilation. The tide had turned, but the final battle was not yet upon them. Humanity, now united in purpose and bolstered by alliances with alien species, was preparing for its most audacious assault, the heart of the Orcs Empire. General Brooks stood on the bridge of the Vanguard, staring at the vast expanse of space before him. His heart was steady, but his mind raced. The fleet at his command was the largest and most powerful humanity had ever assembled, a force of diverse species working together toward one goal, to ensure that Earth would survive and that the Orcs Empire would crumble under the weight of its hubris. "All ships are in position, General," Lieutenant Zhang said, her voice filled with quiet resolve. "We're ready when you are." Brooks nodded. "Once we begin, there's no turning back. We strike at the heart of their empire, their most heavily defended stronghold. We destroy their central command. We cripple them for good." A tense silence fell over the bridge. The crew knew the risks. This wasn't just a raid or a skirmish. It was an all-out assault on the Orcs' core. Failure meant the end for humanity. "All fleets are prepped," Dr. Kwan added, her eyes fixed on the data streaming across the holographic displays. "We've optimized every ship's energy output and adapted our shields to withstand their latest weaponry. We have the advantage in speed and agility, but this will be a war of attrition. We need to stay focused." Brooks turned toward the tactical map of the Orcs capital, a fortress of iron and might located in the heart of the Orcs homeworld, Xanthar. It was a world unlike any other, with immense oceans of acid and toxic storms that could tear ships apart in minutes. It had been virtually untouched by any force in the galaxy until now. But humanity, emboldened by its victories, was about to make its mark on this world. "We'll hit them with everything we have," Brooks said firmly. "We break their lines. We tear down their defenses. And we do it together." The Allied fleets, human, alien, and a mix of freedom fighters, were ready. They had been prepared for months, each member of the coalition contributing their expertise, weapons, and knowledge. The Orcs had thought they were invincible, but humanity had proven otherwise. Now, the time for retribution had come. The first phase of the attack came swiftly. The human fleet, led by the Vanguard, powered into the heart of Orcs space. Stealth ships, cloaked and silent, struck first, disabling the Orcs' outer defense satellites and disabling their communication arrays. It was a surgical strike, meant to sow chaos and confusion, just as the humans had done with the Shadows months before. But this time, the Orcs were waiting. Vrax, now fully aware of humanity's capabilities, had adapted. His ships, a new generation of Orcs war vessels, emerged from their hidden fortresses in the asteroid belt, prepared for the onslaught. The battle that ensued was a brutal, relentless clash of advanced weaponry and military tactics. The Orcs were fierce, their ships designed to endure, their tactics unyielding. But humanity, supported by their allies, had learned to fight with ingenuity, unpredictability, and heart. "We've broken through the first line of defenses," Lieutenant Zhang shouted as her ship darted through a barrage of laser fire. "We're heading for the capital. Keep pushing," Brooks ordered, his voice unwavering despite the ferocity of the enemy's counterattack. "We're almost there." As humanity's fleet pushed forward, the Orcs retaliated with everything they had. Massive energy cannons unleashed devastating beams of plasma, tearing through the fabric of space itself. Each blast sent shockwaves across the battlefield, and each ship that fell was a reminder of the cost of this war. The combined fleets of humanity and their allies fought with relentless precision, but the Orcs' numbers were vast, and their resolve even greater. Brooks knew that this was the tipping point. If they couldn't breach the capital's defenses soon, the Okari would regroup and retaliate with devastating force. Humanity had one chance to win this war, and it would be decided in the next few minutes. All ships, focus on the core, Brooks commanded. We take out their central command. That's our only shot. The Vanguard led the charge, its engines screaming through space as it barreled toward the Okari's capital city, a massive, sprawling metropolis that stretched across the planet's entire surface. High above, the capital's fortress loomed, an impenetrable structure surrounded by a network of shields and automated defenses. But humanity had something the Okari didn't expect, a weaponized, quantum-enhanced EMP wave capable of disabling even the most advanced shields. Activate the EMP. Brooks ordered. The Vanguard released the pulse, a wave of energy that rippled through the void and slammed into the Okari defenses. For a moment, everything went silent. The shields flickered and then failed, allowing humanity's fleet to pour into the breach. We're in. Zhang shouted. Engage the ground forces. Hundreds of drop ships descended onto the surface of Xanther, carrying humanity's best soldiers and their allies. They would strike directly at the heart of the Okari Empire, targeting their central command and leadership. The Okari, caught off guard, scrambled to defend their most sacred stronghold. But humanity was unstoppable. Every strike was precise, every movement coordinated. The Okari had no choice but to retreat. In the heart of the Okari capital, Commander Vrax stood on the edge of the command center, watching the chaos unfold on his screens. His fleet had been shattered, his planet breached. The humans had finally done it, they had broken through the Okari's greatest defense. But he would not yield. He refused to let the Okari fall to a lesser species. You may have won this battle, Vrax spat, his fists trembling with fury. But you will never win this war. He activated the self-destruct sequence for the Central Command, intending to take the entire planet down with him. Back on Earth, General Brooks watched the final moments of the Okari capital's fall on the monitors. The self-destruct sequence was a last-ditch attempt by Vrax to go down in a blaze of glory. But the damage had been done. The Okari's empire was fractured. The final blow had been struck. We've won, Brooks said, his voice heavy with the weight of the moment. But the war is far from over. As the dust settled and the Okari capital began to collapse, humanity knew that their victory had come at a steep price. The galaxy would never be the same. But they had proven that even the most powerful empire in the universe could be toppled. Humanity had fought for its survival, and they had emerged victorious. Now, they would rebuild and prepare for whatever came next. The cosmos had been irrevocably altered, and humanity would never again be content with simply surviving. They would stand at the forefront of the galaxy, ready to shape the future. The fall of the Okari capital reverberated across the galaxy. The once mighty empire, reduced to a fractured shadow of its former self, now lay in ruins. Earth, battered but victorious, stood as a beacon of hope for all civilizations that had suffered under the Okari's ruthless regime. But the victory was bittersweet. The cost of war had left scars that would take generations to heal. The galaxy was forever changed, and the future was uncertain. General Brooks stood on the balcony of Earth's Central Command facility, looking out over the bustling city below. The victory celebrations had ended, but the work was far from over. Humanity had won, but the remnants of the Okari Empire were still out there, hiding in the darkness of space. The Okari leadership had been shattered, but their forces, now scattered and leaderless, still posed a threat. We've taken their capital, Brooks said to Dr. Kwan, who had joined him on the balcony. But how do we ensure this never happens again? Dr. Kwan's gaze remained focused on the horizon, her mind clearly preoccupied with the same question. The Okari aren't finished yet. They may have lost their homeworld, but they have a vast network of supporters, allies, and hidden bases. They'll be rebuilding their forces in secret, waiting for the right moment to strike back. Brooks sighed, his fingers tapping against the stone railing. We can't afford to let them regroup. Earth is safe for now, but the galaxy is still in danger. The moment of triumph had passed, replaced by the cold reality of the war's aftermath. Earth's military, bolstered by alien allies, had become the de facto peacekeepers of the galaxy. The coalition of allied species had been formed, a loose but growing union of worlds determined to prevent any single power, be it the Orcs or another, from dominating the galaxy again. But not all of humanity's allies were content with peace. Among the newly formed coalition, there were those who felt the Orcs' destruction had been only the beginning. The galaxy, in its fragile new state, needed to be reorganized. Some advocated for a more aggressive stance, seeking to prevent any future threats by conquering the remaining Orcs colonies, while others wanted a more diplomatic approach. As Brooks surveyed the new challenges ahead, he knew that the coming years would be filled with hard choices. The galaxy's balance had been shattered, and in the wake of the Orcs' downfall, new forces were rising, forces that might not be as easy to deal with. In the heart of the Orcs' former territories, scattered ships and colonies had become a haven for criminals, warlords, and renegade factions, all seeking to fill the power vacuum left behind by the fall of the Empire. The Orcs' ruthless methods had bred generations of bitter enemies, many of whom now sought revenge against humanity for the Orcs' destruction. "I can feel it," General Brooks muttered to himself, his eyes narrowed with determination. The seeds of a new conflict are already being sown. But amidst the chaos, there were also voices calling for unity. Many of the Orcs' former allies, enslaved and oppressed under the Empire, were seeking to join the coalition of allied species, offering their knowledge, technology, and resources to help rebuild what had been lost. These species, some of them once slaves to the Orcs, now looked to humanity as a guiding light for the future. They believed that, together, they could forge a galaxy free from the iron grip of tyranny. Brooks knew that humanity's role in this new chapter of the galaxy was not just as survivors, but as leaders. The ideals they had fought for, freedom, unity, and resilience, would become the foundation of this new order. Humanity would not just rebuild Earth, they would help rebuild the galaxy. On Earth, the political landscape was shifting. Humanity's leadership, once fragmented and unsure, had begun to coalesce around a new vision. A council of representatives, made up of human leaders and their new alien allies, had been formed to oversee the rebuilding efforts. The central government had been strengthened, its military bolstered, and its economy primed for the coming expansion into the stars. Dr. Kwan was at the forefront of this new initiative. As one of humanity's leading scientists, she had spearheaded the development of new technologies to help the galaxy rebuild. The gauntlet, once a weapon of destruction, was now being repurposed into a device for positive change, capable of stabilizing entire star systems that had been ravaged by war. Humanity, it seemed, had found its place not just as warriors, but as architects of the galaxy's future. But not all was peaceful within the newly formed coalition. Tensions remained between the various species that had united under the banner of shared survival. Humanity's rapid rise to power had made some species uneasy. There were whispers that Earth's leadership was too eager to seize control, and some feared that humanity would soon impose its own agenda on the galaxy. Brooks understood these concerns. The key to the future was trust. Humanity had to prove that it would not repeat the mistakes of the past, that it was not here to dominate, but to help. The next few decades would be critical. Humanity's leadership would be tested as new challenges emerged. Would they be able to maintain the fragile peace they had fought so hard for? Or would the galaxy once again fall into chaos? In the depths of space, however, the true extent of the Orcs' influence was still unknown. The remnants of their empire were scattered, but hidden within the fringes of the galaxy, in the shadow of forgotten stars, dark forces were gathering. A new leader, one who had remained in the shadows during the fall of the Orcs' empire, was beginning to make his presence known. A former general of the Orcs' war machine, now reborn as a leader of the renegades, had begun rallying the scattered remnants of the Orcs' supporters. He was not content with revenge alone. His goal was far more ambitious, to rebuild the Orcs' empire, not just on the ruins of their former power, but across the entire galaxy. In the quiet corners of the galaxy, his influence was spreading. Humanity had won the battle. But the war, for the galaxy's future, was far from over. With Earth standing as a beacon of hope in the stars, General Brooks and his people prepared for the challenges that lay ahead. They had survived against impossible odds. They had defeated an empire that once seemed unstoppable. But in the ashes of the Okari's fall, a new darkness was beginning to rise. The dawn of a new era had come, but the question remained, would humanity be able to guide the galaxy toward peace, or would they be consumed by the very forces they had once fought to destroy? As the stars beckoned, the galaxy held its breath. The future of all worlds now rested in the hands of those brave enough to lead it. Humanity had faced the cosmos and emerged victorious, but the true test had only just begun. And this time, there would be no turning back.